when you wrote I Will Always Love You, and Elvis Presley was going to record it, and suddenly you said, whoa, no, tell me about that.
For more than 6 decades, Dolly Parton has exemplified Southern grace, country charm, and near superhuman diplomacy. She has served as a peacemaker in an ego-driven sector. She stood up for musicians on all sides of a scandal, avoided conflict with a grin, and built her reputation on love, humor, and lyrics that go deeper than any feud. But today, at the age of 78, Dolly Parton is done pretending. Parton has finally spoken out about the 5 musicians she claims she will never work with again, in a startling moment of clarity, given in her own words, rather than through a tabloid or a late-night roast. And it's not about bitterness, it's all about boundaries. "I don't believe in putting people under the bus," she remarked calmly, sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch of her Tennessee mountain home. "But I believe in telling the truth when it's appropriate. And now, the timing feels appropriate." It's hardly what anyone expected from the woman who authored Coat of Many Colors and gave $1 million to fund the development of a COVID vaccine. Dolly Parton has been America's angel, an unrivaled combination of wit, warmth, and wigs. But beneath the diamonds and practiced pleasantries, there's always a fire. And for once, the fire is speaking. She does not use venom to name names. She does it precisely, with stories, with scars. One is a rural legend who abandoned her. Another is a pop star who used her name but forgot her spirit. One was a partner. One person was a father figure. All of them, Dolly claims, taught her something. Some showed her what she desired. Others, she learned exactly what she didn't know. She isn't canceling them. She isn't calling for anyone's ruin. She's simply, in her own words, closing the door that should never have been left open in the first place. Dolly has always played the long game in an industry where silence is valuable and reputation is crucial. However, she has had enough of staying quiet, because even queens become tired of being nice with people who have never treated them like royalty. When Dolly Parton finally names names, the world listens. The rock star who broke her heart, Kenny Rogers. They were the ultimate country pop duo. They delivered one of the most legendary love songs of all time, Islands in the Stream, and when they sang, audiences felt the harmony rather than just hearing it. There was chemistry, warmth, and a weird magnetic connection that generated endless speculation. Were Dolly and Kenny secretly in love? Dolly always responded with a laugh. "We were never lovers," she'd explain, "but we really loved each other." At least that's what the general population believed. What most people didn't realize, and Dolly never openly admitted until today, was that their collaboration came at a cost. And behind the scenes, Kenny Rogers did not always treat her as a collaborator. In fact, he sometimes made her feel invisible. Dolly does not raise her voice during her latest tell-all session. She does not sound angry. If anything, she sounds tired and finally ready to let go of a burden she never asked for. Kenny possessed charm. Lord, did he? She adds, smiling sadly. He could go into a room and make you feel like the only one there, but there were too many occasions when I felt as if I didn't exist at all. Their friendship began in the late 1970s. Kenny was riding high with classics like The Gambler and Lucille, while Dolly was America's country sweetheart, quickly rising to crossover stardom. When their voices collided in the studio, it was like lightning. Their label execs noticed it. The fans witnessed it. So did the media. What the media did not see were the rehearsals in which Kenny arrived several hours late. The decisions were made without her. The album notes where her name was put below his, even on projects they both worked on equally. "There was a moment when we were given a duet tour," Dolly explains. "I was thrilled. I assumed it would be something exceptional, but Kenny's manager informed me that I would have to be labeled as a supporting act. Supporting. On a show we were scheduled to co-headline. Dolly declined the tour. The repercussions were quiet, as it always is when legends are involved. They still appeared on television together. They still hugged for the cameras. What about friendship? It was never exactly the same. Fans noticed the distance between them widening. Years elapsed between collaborations. Interviews got more unclear. Even though both claimed to love and respect each other, something had changed behind the scenes. "I do not hold anything against him," Dolly says now. "Kenny came from another world. He had his own way of doing things. But the truth is that he damaged me. not according to what he said. However, there was something he did not say, with what he authorized others to do in his name. She pauses for a long time. I'd have stood up for him. I did. I only wish he had done the same. Perhaps the most heartbreaking phase occurred in Kenny's final years. As his health deteriorated, Dolly made several visits. She was occasionally granted permission. She wasn't always there, which was strange. I recall calling his team and asking if I could see him. She explains quietly. They warned me, now's not a good moment. Then I saw another star publish a photo with him days later. She had no idea if that was Kenny's choice or someone else's, but she felt excluded. It made a deep cut. When Kenny died in 2020, Dolly posted a moving tribute. She cried during the interviews. She dubbed him a soulmate in song, and she meant it. But the tears concealed a fact she is just now willing to admit. Their friendship died long before the final goodbye. Is this the final blow? A planned posthumous album of unpublished duets featuring songs with Dolly, which she discovered about through a press release rather than Kenny's family or company. I just remember sitting there and reading the story, she explains, and thinking, so this is how I found out. I was a footnote in his goodbye. Despite this, Dolly claims she has no grudges. She had forgiven Kenny a long time ago, but she also understands where her line is drawn. I will always appreciate the music we created, she says, but I'll never perform another duet with his name on it, not in fury, but in peace. That chapter is finished. With that, she closes the door. Dolly Parton, the queen of second chances who composed I Will Always Love You as both a farewell and a forgiveness song, has now admitted that not all goodbyes are poetic. Some are simply necessary. She does not dislike Kenny Rogers. She simply refuses to continue pretending that the man behind the music always loved her in the same way she loved him. And for someone who has based her life on grace, expressing that much could be the most courageous thing she has ever done. The pop star who wanted her image, Miley Cyrus. If you had asked Dolly Parton 10 years ago what she thought of Miley Cyrus, she would have answered, she's family. This wasn't a figure of speech. Dolly is Miley's godmother. She sang her praises, defended her most outrageous acts, and once told Barbara Walters that Miley's gonna shock people now and bless them later. But what happens when the family stops calling? What happens when appreciation turns to appropriation? Dolly Parton is speaking out for the first time about her strained relationship with her famous goddaughter, as well as the agony of seeing a younger version of herself rise to prominence and leave her in the dust. I never wanted her to be me, Dolly admits today. I wanted her to get better, smarter, kinder. I wanted her to understand where she came from, not only musically, but spiritually. However, the kid eventually stopped listening to the teacher. Dolly claims it started tiny. Phone calls have ceased being returned. Invitations to events strangely did not come. Then followed the interviews, in which Miley began to discuss her southern roots and humble beginnings in frighteningly familiar terms, almost too familiar. I'd see her wearing diamond boots and fringe coats on stage, Dolly says, performing stripped-down country versions of rock songs, singing with the same rasp I had when I was younger. And I would think, that's nice. I thought she was honoring me, but she wasn't even mentioning me. Dolly insisted it wasn't about ego. It was about something deeper, something that every artist fears but few are ready to admit. She began exploiting my image to climb a peak she didn't want me to, she adds. The breaking point occurred in 2022, with Miley's much-anticipated comeback to country music with her album Plastic Hearts. Critics hailed her newfound maturity and country pop crossover flair, but Dolly, who had mentored Miley since childhood, performed with her on national television, and helped bridge the gap from Hannah Montana to headline act, was not involved. I did not receive a phone call, Dolly admits bluntly, not even a courtesy copy. Next came the music videos, the interviews, Miley's tour of late-night shows, in which she talked about growing up in Tennessee and channeling a little bit of Dolly, but never invited the real Dolly to participate. It felt like watching someone wear your flesh and never thank you for it, she recalls. Still, Dolly remained silent. That is what she does. She penned a note. She prayed about it. She waited for the telephone to ring. It did not. And then came the moment she says changed everything. A producer approached Dolly to see if she would feature in a documentary called Women Who Changed Country Music, to talk about Miley Cyrus. Not Reba, not Loretta, not Tammy or Patsy, Miley. I said no, Dolly explains, and I cried when I hung up the phone. Not because I was upset, but I realized that was who I was now. A footnote, the character reference. In her gentle manner, Dolly attempted to extend a final olive branch. She wrote a letter to Miley's management, offering a duet, cooperation or anything, an opportunity to reconnect. The response was polite, but frigid, scheduling conflicts. There is no evident interest. Dolly claims that's when she knew. She didn't simply forget who I was, she explains. She outgrew the desire to pretend. Dolly has no bad intentions towards Miley. She still refers to her as a creative, wild-hearted soul. However, the godmother-goddaughter link, long supposed to be impenetrable, has deteriorated into something considerably more human and far more terrible. She snatched my image, Dolly adds quietly, but she did not share my principles, and I can't share a stage with someone who only wants the glitter, not the roughness. When asked if she'd ever work with Miley again, Dolly pauses. No, she answers simply. I will always love her, but I will not pursue her. For a lady who built her kingdom on grace, that line is both solid and painful. There is no wrath in her voice, only clarity. The sound of someone who has realized the difference between being honored and being used. Because if there's one thing Dolly Parton knows better than anyone else, you can pass the torch. However, no one has the right to run with it if they never looked you in the eyes while you were still holding it. The legend who mocked her behind her back, Elvis Presley estate. If there's one story Dolly Parton has recounted multiple times, it's about the day she turned down Elvis Presley. On the surface, it appears to be a story of artistic victory, with a young songwriter refusing to give up her publishing rights in order to get the king to record her song. But Dolly never mentioned, until today, how badly it hurt her and how the consequences tormented her for decades. Elvis wanted the song, I Will Always Love You. The Colonel, his notorious manager, wanted it, but there was a catch. She had to give up half her rights. They said it was usual, Dolly recalls, her voice measured but fierce. Standard for whom? For males who believed that a lady like me should be grateful just to be asked. She said no. Elvis never recorded this song, and everyone knows what happened next. Whitney Houston turned it into one of the biggest hits of all time. What the world does not know is what transpired following the no. According to Dolly, whispering began almost quickly. Rumors circulated that she was difficult, does not respect the king, and was too naughty for her own good. They made me feel like I had insulted God himself, she explains, but I was only safeguarding what I had built. She claims that the hardest part was not the rejection. It was how Elvis's inner circle, the guys who ran the Presley estate in the years after his death, tried to keep her out of projects, tributes, and honors. I was invited to play at a tribute concert in Vegas, she explains. Last minute, I was informed that I had been removed from the lineup. There's no explanation, just gone. Years later, she was asked to be a part of a joint Elvis project that combined his vintage vocals with new performers. She agreed. She recorded her portion. And then, the radio is silent. They ghosted me, she explains, and the railroad never saw daylight. At first, Dolly assumed it was terrible luck, but then I received a message from an industry acquaintance, a producer who had previously dealt with Graceland's licensing staff. He informed her bluntly, they don't want your name near his. Still, decades after her gutsy no, she was being punished for it. The fact that Elvis never got to sing her song isn't the worst part for Dolly. The guys who survived him weaponized his legacy, that they used his name and the notion of his untouchability to undermine hers. Elvis would have understood, she adds softly. He understood what it took to fight for something he believed in. I believe Dad would have respected me for sticking up for myself. What about the males around him? They did not want to respect me. They wanted me to be silent. When asked if she would accept another invitation from the Presley estate, Dolly shakes her head. I wish them well, she adds, but no, not anymore. You don't get to close the door on me for 30 years and then expect me to come in and smile for the cameras. And with that, she concludes another chapter. not with venom, but with the unwavering grace of a woman who has ceased apologizing for standing her ground. Dolly Parton was reportedly asked to relinquish her rights, but she never revealed her worth. The diva who shut her out, Reba McEntire. Dolly Parton and Reba McEntire are among the most respected figures in country music. On paper, they are peers, icons. Queens from many ages have stood tall in sequins and heartbreak, establishing their own history on the Nashville skyline. But beyond the gorgeous duets, bright award displays, and loving tributes lies a truth that Dolly has never expressed before. Reba locked me out, she explains. I have never understood why. Their friendship began with mutual respect. In the 1980s, Reba was on the rise, while Dolly was already a living legend. There were smiles on red carpets, pleasant words in interviews, and even talk of a collaborative tour that never materialized. I liked her, Dolly admits. Still do, honestly. But sometime along the line, it stopped being mutual. Dolly recalls that the transformation occurred gently and abruptly. It began with awards shows. I was presenting at the CMAs one year, she recalls, while Reba hosted. I imagined we'd share the stage and maybe perform a little bit together, but she didn't even talk to me backstage. Not a greeting, not a nod. Nothing. Later, she learned from a mutual friend that Reba had specifically asked not to share screen time with her. She wanted her time, the pal explained. She did not want it diluted. Dolly said she tried to brush it off. Perhaps it was nerves. Perhaps Reba had too much on her plate, but it kept happening. Invitations that never came. She was not requested to participate in projects that honored her contributions to country music. I heard there was a tribute event for female pioneers, Dolly continues, her voice still full of surprise. Reba helped make it. I was not invited. When fans wondered why the two hadn't done more together, Dolly always provided the same answer: the timing never worked out. But now she admits the truth. I was not wanted. It wasn't jealousy, she insisted. I never felt like I needed to compete with Reba. We're not alike. It's strange to see someone walk the path you helped pave and act as if you never existed. She never challenged Reba directly. I'm not in the business of starting fights, Dolly explains, but I know when a door is locked from the opposite side. When asked if she would ever perform with Reba again, Dolly responds without hesitation. No, she replies firmly. If it hasn't happened yet, it probably wasn't intended to. I do not pursue those who do not want me in the room. There is no animosity in her voice, just a peaceful resignation. Another reminder that even legends are subject to exclusion. Dolly Parton transformed country music, making it softer, sweeter, and stronger. Even queens have to admit that not everyone wants to share the throne. The one that hurt the most, Porter Wagoner. Of all the names Dolly Parton has been associated with throughout her life, romantically, professionally, or otherwise, none cut deeper or shaped her more severely than Porter Wagoner. He didn't simply offer her a stage, he cast a spotlight on her. He introduced her to America as a young girl with huge hair, a bigger smile, and a heart full of hopes. Their chemistry on the Porter Wagoner show throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s was legendary. He was the star. She was the rising one. They collaborated to create some of country television's most memorable moments. But what the audience didn't realize, or didn't want to witness, was how swiftly appreciation turned into ownership. He welcomed me in with open arms, Dolly recounts now. But once I began to shine on my own, those arms became chains. What began as a mentoring quickly turned into suffocation. Dolly's popularity was rising quickly, and she wanted to extend her wings by writing her own music, recording her own songs, and venturing beyond Porter's stage. But the man who had previously supported her began to regard her ambition as treachery. When I told him I was quitting the show, he went crazy, she recounts. He claimed I'd be nothing without him. I owed him my career, that I was selfish and ungrateful. The fallout was terrible. Lawsuits were filed. Words were spoken that could never be forgotten. They didn't speak for years, not even in court or during media interviews. Despite her sadness, Dolly did something unexpected. She wrote, "I will always love you," It wasn't a love song for a man, she explains. It was a farewell to someone I cared greatly about, even if he broke my heart. The song became a classic. Porter gradually came around. Near the end of his life, he conceded that Dolly had exceeded him, and he was proud of it in his own twisted way. But Dolly never forgot her wound. She never ceased carrying the scar. He helped make me, she explains, but he also sought to unmake me once I stopped needing him. When he died in 2007, Dolly openly mourned him. She spoke at his funeral. She embraced his family. But there was one thing she never did and never will. I never sang with him again after I left, she admits. Not on the record, not on stage. I made my peace, but I also made a decision. To this day, fans romanticize their relationship. They clamor for unpublished duets, live recordings, and archive footage. Dolly, on the other hand, believes that the past should be remembered rather than relived. It's a chapter that taught me strength, she explains, but I don't have to reread it. Porter Wagoner is also referred to as Dolly's launchpad. She remembers him as more multifaceted, a father figure who became a rival, a teacher who disliked the student's success, and a man who relished the spotlight until someone else took it. He gave me a microphone, she explains, but I had to battle to have my own voice. The internet reacts. A nation sides with Dolly. When Dolly Parton speaks, everyone listens. But when she names names, with the grace of a Southern belle and the clarity of a woman who has held her mouth for far too long, the internet explodes. Within hours of her discoveries being public, social media networks were fired. Hashtags such as #DollySpoke, #RespectTheQueen, and #JusticeForDolly trended worldwide. Fans were not only astonished, but also fervently protective, flooding every thread, post, and comment section with impassioned responses. She didn't burn bridges, one tweet stated. She stopped pretending they hadn't already left. Instagram fan accounts began unearthing past interviews, emphasizing minor occasions when Dolly was interrupted, talked over, or overshadowed by the very people she is now criticizing. Her duets with Kenny Rogers were rewatched with a fresh perspective. Montage films of Dolly and Miley were shared with comments such as, "From love to loss." But probably the most emotional reaction came from ordinary individuals, women, artists, and fans who saw their own experiences mirrored in Dolly's restraint. "She showed us that kindness does not imply weakness," a popular comment read. "You can forgive someone and go away." Even several other country stars joined in the chorus. Casey Musgraves tweeted a simple rose emoji with the phrase, "Queen," while Brandi Carlile wrote, "Dolly's grace has always been louder than most people's rage." This just demonstrates it. The answers were not merely supportive, they were also solidarity-based. Because Dolly had not started a vendetta, she had not been on a takedown tour. She had simply, finally, said enough. In a world that frequently pressures women to choose between truth and likability, Dolly taught us that dignity does not imply silence. It just means waiting for your turn in the spotlight and then making the most of it. Conclusion: the Queen still reigns. In a culture that continually expects more from women, more smiles, patience, and silence, Dolly Parton has always provided something altogether different: grace. But grace does not imply that she forgets. After decades of smiling through exclusion, betrayal, and backhanded praise, Dolly has finally spoken. Not to cancel, not to clap back, but she wants to reclaim her story. Dolly disclosed the truth when she named the 5 people that violated her trust, stretched her limitations, or took her affection for granted, and she did it in the most Dolly way possible, without wrath, without spectacle, and with unwavering clarity. She did not shout, she did not launch any punches, she just closed the door, one at a time. Because a woman like Dolly Parton does not burn bridges, she outgrew them. Her stories about Kenny, Miley, the Presley estate, Reba, and Porter Wagoner are not acts of retribution. They are actions of release. They serve as a reminder that behind every glittering grin is a steel spine, a ledger of wounds, and a heart that has learned over and over when to walk away. She provided millions of people a voice, to ladies attending business meetings, to daughters during uncomfortable family dinners, to vocalists in smoky bars. Each of them had their own quiet list of names. Maybe that's the best gift Dolly ever offered. Not only the music, not simply philanthropy, but the bravery to say, "I loved you, but I'm done." She isn't looking to leave a legacy at 78 years old. She is the legacy. So when Dolly Parton finally declares who she will never work with again, it is hardly a bombshell. It is a coronation, because queens do not require permission to speak. They simply need the right moment. What about Dolly? She accepted it elegantly, firmly, and without apologies.